Hi, it's me again. In this video, I'd like to tell you about 3 books that I got while I was traveling in the Caribbean. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the speculative writing of the Caribbean, or a morsel of it, like I'm not an expert, okay? There are other content creators who are experts, but my family is from Trinidad, and I am in the process of learning a little bit more about folklore in particular, but also writing by Caribbean writers about the Caribbean. So if you are interested in that, I hope that you keep watching. You stayed. I'm very happy. So I want to tell you about these 3 books, and I also, while I'm here, want to give you maybe a little bit of story time. So I'm an only child. My parents were both born in Trinidad, and they immigrated here at different time periods in the late 70s to, it's not an uncommon story to explore what life could be like in Canada. And so when I grew up, my parents took us to a Caribbean Catholic church downtown Toronto. And there I had the opportunity to meet people from different parts of the Caribbean, mostly Trinidad, but a lot of other places as well. And that was my main, besides my immediate family, that was my main contact with the Caribbean. So we would have a lot of different events that were similar to what they would have done in church communities at home. And then there was also a lot of folklore and dance. We had this event called the Toronto International Pavilion. And in this event, community organizations like the Trinidad and Tobago Association or the Portuguese Association or the Polish Canadian Association, they would each organize like a cultural event in a community center, and you would get a passport, and then you could go to these different events. So the pavilion would take place over a 2-week period, and then you would get your little passport, and then you would pay an entrance fee, and then you would go to a community center, and there would usually be a show and food and information about the various peoples within the communities. So that was something that I was also exposed to because there were members of our church who were involved in the Trinidad and Tobago Association. And as a part of like being a member of this church while we were, and then also going to things like the pavilions, I had access to a lot of folklore. So my parents sometimes told me stories or mentioned like monsters and things that they grew up with, like La Diablesse was one. I mean, I know that the word is La Diablesse, but I when my father would pronounce it, it would be La Diablesse. So I remember stories of like Sukunya, and other, I think like my mom remembers watching a show called Barnabas, but I don't think it was a Caribbean show. I think it was a vampire show that she saw on like, I don't know, their television. But I do remember having a lot of like stories growing up as a kid, just really short ones that came out of folklore. But then also we would have a lot of storytelling as well. And the storytelling would, give me sort of a bit of a sense of what it was like to be a kid and be, I guess, introduced to magical worlds of the Caribbean. My camera was beeping. I don't know why, but I think it means hurry up. So all this is to say that there's a lot for me to learn. So this is Folklore Stories of Trinidad and Tobago, written by Al Ramsawak. And so this book includes lots of stories of like common folk tales of Trinidad and Tobago. So we've got Captives of the Mystic Laborer, The Lord Street Phantom, The Fiery Woman of Mafeking, Duends in Quarry Village, Revenge of the Warrior, The Devil's Manitou, Papa Couchon, The Devil's Pig, a lot of things about the devil, The Legend of the Washerwoman, Haunts of the Cat, Mystery of the Cocoa Worker. Nalo Hopkinson's books also pick up a lot of West Indian, Caribbean folklore. So I'm just really excited to read and to learn more. And maybe when I read other works, I will recognize some of the seeds from more traditional folklore. So that I'm excited about. Also, while I was in Trinidad earlier this year, I had the opportunity to spend some time with Sajid from Books of My Social Life, and he and I just like traveled around and had wonderful conversations, while me, not him, being winded on a walk that was really a hike for me. And he gifted me with this book, and this book is Pay As You Go, written by Escor David Johnson. And so New to town and delusionally confident, Slide imagined himself living in a glossy building with doormen and sweeping views of the skyline. Instead, he's landed in a creaking, stuffy apartment with two roommates, a lopping giant who hardly leaves his room, and a weight-obsessed neurotic who keeps no less than 47 lamps throughout the house, blazing at all hours. Unwilling to accept this fate, Slide, a barber with an opaque past, embarks on a quest for the perfect apartment, pinballing through the sprawling madcap city of Polis and its endless procession of neighborhoods. As he bounces from fold-out couch to disaster relief tent, falling in with some tough types, Slide begins to realize that he's going to have to scratch and claw just to claim a place for himself in this world, let alone a place with in-unit laundry. An exuberant, fantastical odyssey, Pay As You Go wonders if what we're searching for is ever really out there. Its pages, surreal, biting, and teeming with life, announce the startling talents of Escor David Johnson, who knows that all any of us really want is a place to rest our head. So Sajid was intrigued by this because he thought that this would have fantastical elements, and it definitely sounds like it does, but it sounds very mundane as well, and I'm into mundane, like surrealist elements in otherwise mundane stories. So I'm looking forward to that. And Escor David Johnson is a writer from Trinidad and Tobago and the United States. So Pay As You Go. Like, this seems like the kind of story that will just get twisted really, really quick. Let me just check to see if this is recording. Okay. It's recording. We're good. Okay. So as I mentioned in my introduction to the series, I was recently in Dominica and had an incredible time, which I'll probably talk about in another video. And we were staying at an eco lodge called, I think it's called Seacliff. And there's a little library, and in the library there were books to read and also books for sale. And so of course I had to pick up this book. This is Abraham's Treasure by Joanne Scarrett. Joanne Scarrett is a Dominican writer, and I believe she's also a lawyer. I want to say she's a writer and a lawyer, and because I remember being like, wait, what? So she was born and brought up in Dominica. She moved to the U.S. in the 80s. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, she has a law degree, and she's been a journalist. Okay, and she's worked as a lawyer. She lives in D.C. So yeah, so I was like, lawyer, writer. Okay, thanks, universe. I hear you. So Abraham's Treasure. When teenage twins James and Jerome are told that treasure buried during the days of slavery is their rightful inheritance, their summer holidays turn into a frantic treasure hunt. Determined to find Abraham's treasure, they decode the clues that take them to the mystical interior of their Caribbean island home. On the way to a terrifying resolution, they meet a helpful parrot, a ghostly figure from the past, and a legless man who can walk. They escape from a falling tower and discover a boiling lake. Close behind them, however, is their enemy, an evil stranger who also has claims on the treasure. So that's Abraham's Treasure. And I started to read this, and I was instantly intrigued, but then I was also sleeping by myself in a very dark place, and so I didn't finish reading it, and actually didn't continue. I wanted to wait until I got home because I think there's like spooky vibes. So it feels very like Eden Royce's spooky vibes. yeah, it feels kind of like I'm gonna have some spooky vibes, spooky Caribbean, like in the bush, eyes in the bush kind of vibes. And I was like, let me read this. Let me wait till I get home before I read this. So those are some books that I gathered while away. I would encourage you, if you are traveling to the Caribbean, visit bookstores. Visit bookstores and get to know the local presses, and then buy books from local bookstores that are published by local presses. So, for example, Abraham's Treasure was published by Papillot Press, or Papillot Press, and that is a press out of Dominica. It's a local publishing house. And then I also believe that so this is self-published. This book was self-published by Al Ramsawak and Anne-Marie Samsundar. But Pay As You Go, who published this? McSweeney, San Francisco. So not a local press. But to the best of your ability, definitely try to support local presses, particularly in the Caribbean, because it's really hard for books by Caribbean writers to find themselves in Western stores, and so that's bookstores. So I think it's really important to do that. When I was in the bookstore in Trinidad, I saw a lot of titles that I could have gotten in, and I actually had piled them up. I was like, oh, I've always meant to buy these, but then I put most of them back because I could get them here. Why not get the books that would not find themselves in a Toronto bookstore? So when you are traveling, if you have the ability to travel, don't forget the local bookstores in the places that you're in, and then talk about them. Okay, I think that's the end. That is the end. That is all I'm saying. If you have watched this video all the way to the end, I would love you to, I would love a Trinidadian flag and a Dominican flag, and yeah, I would love to hear if you have any stories of local bookstores outside of the area that you live, and any gems that you found there. I would really love to hear your stories of finding really interesting books. So remember always to read with purpose. If you like this content, please feel free to share it with others on your social media, or just let them know, look, ONYX Pages is pretty cool. You should check it out. I'm really proud of the content that I have created, and looking forward to being inspired to create more. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching.